Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, I thought that I would talk about a potential matchup between Mr. Andrew Ruiz Jr. and also one of the top heavyweights in the world, Mr. Luis Ortiz. Apparently, this fight might potentially happen next. I'm not sure how likely it is to happen, but from what I keep hearing with certain rumors, it might happen, and I think that it is a very intriguing matchup. So, I thought that I would talk about it. I thought that I would talk about the last time that I've seen both of those competitors and overall who I think would win this fight and how great of a fight I think that it actually is. So let's get into it. Well, first of all, when it comes down to it, if you did not know, Andrew Ruiz recently won against Chris Ariola by unanimous decision on May 1st on a pay per view main event card. Now, the interesting thing is, is that the fight really did not go as a lot of people expected it to go, or at least it did not go the way that I thought it was going to go, because I thought that Andrew Ruiz was going to be a certain amount more dominant in that fight than he actually was. It turned out that Andrew Ruiz ended up not only getting hit a certain amount of times in that fight, he ended up getting hurt a certain amount of times in that fight. Now, that's not me saying that Andrew Ruiz did not win this fight somewhat dominantly, because I personally scored it, I think, about 11 rounds to 1. I think that's what my scorecard was, and two of the judges, I think, had it that way as well, and I understand why they scored it that way. I think one of my people who watch my channel, I believe his YouTube channel name is Leonard Thomas, so shout out to him. He commented, he said that he scored the fight about 8 rounds to 4 for Andrew Ruiz. I'd have to watch it again to give maybe a more pristine scoring, but, I think 11 rounds to 1 is somewhat accurate, but when it comes down to it, Andrew Ruiz did not go out of that fight or did not get through that fight without his troubles. There was a bunch of troubles for Andrew Ruiz Jr. in that fight. He ended up getting hit a lot. He ended up getting hurt a multitude of times. And now, after people look at that fight, they're now wondering how well Andrew Ruiz would fare against some of the world's top heavyweights in the world. Well, listen, let me tell you this. Andrew Ruiz, in my opinion, is a top 5 heavyweight in the world. And some people may disagree, but when I take a look at accomplishments, resume, and a certain amount of other things, I have to at least rank him, and this is at the lowest, I have to rank him at least at the number 5 spot. When you talk about fighters to where they've won belts or have a decent resume, yada, 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 I have to rank him at least at the number 5 spot. To me, personally, I would rank him at the number 4 spot. Now, what new media and the LDBC, what they'll probably try to say, I've seen new media do this, I'm not sure what the LDBC channels have been saying, but it would not surprise me if they tried to say this. They're going to try and convince you that Luis Ortiz is a top 5 heavyweight in the world. He is not. And the reason why they try to convince you that Luis Ortiz is a top 5 heavyweight in the world, not only is that a way of someone insulting Anthony Joshua, because they always love to say that Anthony Joshua lost to a low-tier heavyweight like Andrew Ruiz. Well, we all know Andrew Ruiz is not a low-tier heavyweight. But when it comes down to it, Andrew Ruiz is not on the same level as the Elite Three. And the Elite Three is Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, and Deontay Wilder. Now, if you were talking about from first place to third place, I would say it's Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, and Deontay Wilder. But still, those are the Elite Three. And I can't say that Andrew Ruiz is necessarily on their level, at least from what I've seen. But when it comes down to it, Andrew Ruiz, I would have to say, is at least at 4th place for me when it comes to the heavyweights of the world, because he does have that one A-grade win over Anthony Joshua. Even if that wasn't Anthony Joshua, that in my opinion did not take him very seriously, and that's probably a big part of the reason why he lost that fight. Because I don't think Anthony Joshua took his training or his conditioning very seriously once he figured out that instead of Jarrell Big Baby Miller as his opponent, it was going to be that chubby little guy, Andrew Ruiz, for his opponent. And I think Anthony Joshua took him very lightly, and I think that that was a very big mistake, obviously. So it is what it is. But the big question now is this. Andrew Ruiz, now that he's got a new trainer, Canelo Alvarez's trainer, Eddie Reynoso, and got a new corner, and apparently seems to have lost all this weight and changed himself, can he compete with the elites of the heavyweight division? And is he going to be able to beat a certain amount of the top contenders in the heavyweight division with a performance like he had against Chris Ariola? If he performs like that later on down the road, will he be able to beat some of these top guys? And another big question is, will he continue to perform like this, or will he return to some more of his old habits? We'll see what happens. I'm not really sure. One thing I guess you could say about Andrew Ruiz, and I'm not always one to really bring up this, a bit of information, but Ruiz, I believe, did not fight for the whole entire year of 2020. So it is what it is. But when it comes down to it, Andrew Ruiz, who's been out for quite a while, had not fought ever since the Anthony Joshua rematch in a fight where he got thoroughly dominated in. Changed corners, so maybe there was a little bit of a, maybe he's still getting used to it. I don't know. One thing I'll say is this. I noticed certain improvements, and I noticed certain things that actually got worse in this fight against Chris Arreola. I seen Andrew Ruiz have improved mobility. Now, maybe it's because Chris Arreola is not the quickest on his feet. Maybe it's because Chris Arreola is a little bit slower compared to some of the other guys that Andrew Ruiz could potentially face. But one fault that I've seen with Andrew Ruiz in his career against both Joseph Parker and Anthony Joshua, 2 fights that he ended up losing. Now, the Anthony Joshua fight with one of the 2 losses in his career, that's the only loss in his career that I think is 100% definitive. The Joseph Parker fight I thought could have went either way. And there, to be honest with you, there's a couple of times where I thought Joseph Parker maybe could have lost fights or that the decisions were a little bit closer than I thought they could have been. Or not closer, excuse me, but overall that they were a bit, that could have went to the other guy. Andrew Ruiz was one of those fights. Derek Chisora, it looked like that could have been one of those fights. But to be fair, I said that I thought Joseph Parker pulled out of that fight as well. So it is what it is. But, Joseph Parker has had a couple of fights to where it's been relatively close. You could argue it either way. But, of course, I'll have to rewatch the Joseph Parker-Derek Chisora one. But anyways, when it comes down to it, Andrew Ruiz, one fault that I've seen with him in the Joseph Parker fight and in the Anthony Joshua rematch, I thought that he did not have much mobility. And I thought that his feet were very slow. I thought that his foot speed was very slow. I thought that he had no ability to cut off the ring whatsoever. And that he just looked very slow in certain moments. And that, he had no ability to cut off the ring and get to his opponent because his feet really were planted in the mud. It is what it is. And certain Mexican fighters do have a problem with that. Mexican/Mexican American fighters have had a problem with that in the past, especially against fighters that like to be on the back foot and like to be movers. You'll see this with certain fights in the past, even with the great ones like Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. when he fought Pernell Whitaker. So it is what it is. But when it comes down to it, one thing I'll say about Andrew Ruiz is this. I noticed an increase in his mobility in this fight. Now, once again, it could be because Chris Arreola is not the most mobile of fighters. It could be because Chris Arreola is 40 years old. I don't know. But I noticed an increased mobility in this fight from Andrew Ruiz. So I was a little bit happy with that, to see that. But with that being said, it looked like his defense got exponentially worse. And that is something that does need to be addressed. Because there was a bunch of shots in this fight that Andrew Ruiz probably should have not got hit by. There were certain times where I think that Andrew Ruiz should have been able to be a little bit more calculative. I think overall that he should have calculated things a little bit better. I think that in certain times he did not make the best decisions because there were certain times where Chris Arreola was hitting him, and instead of trying to think things out, he would try to go in there and try to get him back immediately. And then that would lead to him getting hit even more. Chris Arreola certainly put on a hell of a fight. What I'll say is this. Chris Arreola, I did expect him to get knocked out. I expected him to get dominated. But Chris Arreola actually was very competitive in the fight. And I think a part of the reason why was because he had that new trainer in his corner, Joe Goosen. So I give a lot of credit to Chris Arreola for putting on a hell of a fight. And I give a lot of credit to Joe Goosen because I did not think Chris Arreola was going to be that good for this fight. But with that being said, there is no way that Andrew Ruiz should have been able to take, or excuse me, not been able. There's no way that he should have taken the shots that he did in that fight. He should have been more defensively responsible. And it cost him a couple of times in this fight as he got knocked down, I believe, once in the second round. And I think in the third round, he ended up getting hurt with the left hook. One thing is for sure, Andrew Ruiz did not look A-class in this fight. That is one thing I'll say. Or you can say overall it was not an A-class performance for what we were expecting. It is what it is. Here's the question. Can Andrew Ruiz beat a Luis Ortiz? Can he beat a Dillian White? Can he beat a Deontay Wilder? Because these are the opponents that I keep hearing rumors about him possibly facing next. Because I doubt that he's going to get an Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury fight. It seems like those guys are going to sign off in a fight. I'm not sure what's going on with that necessarily. I hope they get the fight done. We'll just have to see what happens. Either way, even if that fight does not get signed off on, I don't think that he's going to get either Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua anyway. And I doubt that he's going to get Deontay Wilder. So that leads us to two options if he is going to get a big fight for his next fight. One is Dillian White, and I'm not necessarily sure if Andrew Ruiz is looking at him on his radar. I heard that he turned down the Dillian White fight. Now, I'm not sure how true that is. Someone let me know on that because I haven't done my research on that. But the one fight overall that I keep hearing about is him versus Luis Ortiz. And here's the question. Would he be able to beat a Luis Ortiz? Because now, once again, new media and the LDBC, they're probably going to try and convince you that Luis Ortiz is in that same category with a Dillian White, with an Andrew Ruiz. I'm not sure if he is. Now, in terms of skill set and boxing IQ and talent, he might be on a similar level. But when we talk about career resume and career accomplishments, he's not on their level. And that's the bottom line. Luis Ortiz, when we talk about world heavyweights, is not within the top 5. But once again, the reason why they try to rank him within the top 5 is because it makes Deontay Wilder look better. And the narrative that they try to promote is, oh, well, the top contender that Deontay Wilder beat in Luis Ortiz would beat any of the top guys that Anthony Joshua, beat, basically, or Tyson Fury beat. That's basically what they try to say, to make, Deontay Wilder look better than he actually is. So it is what it is. But of course, that being said, I still rank Deontay Wilder as the 3rd best heavyweight. Bottom line is this. Would Andrew Ruiz be able to beat some of these guys? I think if he were to face a Dillian White next, he would really have to sharpen up his skill set in order to beat a Dillian White. Because Dillian White is no joke, and a certain amount of people may not give Dillian White a proper amount of respect. What I'll say is this, Dillian White is no joke. Dillian White has decent speed. He's got very good power when it comes down to it. He looked more defensively responsible in his last fight against Alexander Povetkin than what Andrew Ruiz did in this fight against Chris Arreola. And Dillian White has beat some big names in his career. He's beat Derek Chisora twice. He's beaten Joseph Parker in a fight to where I thought Dillian White dominated. Now, of course, the Joseph Parker fan base, they disagree. But one thing that you notice about the Joseph Parker fan base is that, just like the Deontay Wilder fan base, they tend to be heavily delusional. But it is what it is. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that now, but bottom line is this. I thought Dillian White dominated the Joseph Parker fight, even though there were certain parts in that fight where it was competitive. And when it comes down to it, Dillian White also beat Oscar Rivas. He also recently beat Alexander Povetkin. Dillian White, you certainly could argue, is the number 4 heavyweight in the world, but I rank Andrew Ruiz at the number 4 spot because he has that win over Anthony Joshua. And he ended up winning those 3 world titles. So it is what it is, but when it comes down to it, if he really wants to face a Dillian White next, he's going to have to sharpen up his skill set. Because if that same Andrew Ruiz shows up against Dillian White, he is not going to beat a Dillian White. He could get very badly hurt against a Dillian White. But his next opponent might be a Luis Ortiz. Can he beat a Luis Ortiz? In my opinion, this is a great fight, and I would love to see it. In my opinion, he more than likely would probably beat a Luis Ortiz, even if he were to put on a performance like this. Because Andrew Ruiz was able to pretty much pull out all of the second half of the fight against Chris Arreola, at least from what I've seen when it came down to it. And on top of that, when I take a look at an Andrew Ruiz Jr. versus Luis Ortiz matchup, the question really is this. Do you believe that Luis Ortiz would knock down Andrew Ruiz multiple times, at least twice within the first 6 or 7 rounds? Do you possibly believe that he would knock Andrew Ruiz out? Now, I'm not saying it's impossible because, Luis Ortiz, he has good power. He's a decent boxer. But the problem is with Luis Ortiz, that you notice with him in his big fights, is that he tends to run out of stamina at about the 6th or 7th round. And Andrew Ruiz most likely is going to pull out that second half of the fight against Luis Ortiz. And that's assuming, if you think Luis Ortiz is going to win that fight, that Luis Ortiz, wins every single round, maybe even knocks him down once or twice in the first half of that fight. That's assuming that Andrew Ruiz does not win any of the first beginning rounds, if you're assuming that Luis Ortiz wins this fight. And I'm just not sure if Luis Ortiz can really do that. So it is what it is. I think that it's a great fight when it comes down to it. And even for Luis Ortiz's age, what is he, like 42 now? I'm not sure how old he is, but when it comes down to it, he is older. But when it comes down to Luis Ortiz, he's just always had a little bit of a problem with stamina. That's why when you take a look at him versus Deontay Wilder, he does very good in the first half of the fight, but then he always got knocked out in the second half of the fight. I believe in that first fight, he ended up getting knocked out within 9 or 10 rounds. I think it was the 10th round, but I could be wrong. And I thought Luis Ortiz was winning that fight, but it is what it is. He ended up getting knocked out. And the second fight, he certainly was winning. He won every single round until that 7th round hit. And like I said, that's a round where Luis Ortiz starts to run out of stamina and gets a little bit too lackadaisical and stands a little bit too still. And that is the reason why I'm just not sure if I see Luis Ortiz beating an Andrew Ruiz. Once again, to me, Luis Ortiz is a very talented heavyweight, but he's not one of the top 5 heavyweights in the world. Not only because, in my opinion, of his abilities, but when it comes down to it, he just does not have a resume. I mean, if we really want to get truthful about Luis Ortiz, what elite wins does he really have in his career besides Brian Jennings? And is the Brian Jennings win, when we really take a look at it today, is that really an A-class win? Brian Jennings today, I'm not really sure how old he is when it comes out. Maybe like, 34? Maybe I'm wrong about that. I can't remember his age. But when it comes down to it, Brian Jennings certainly is not an elite heavyweight. Brian Jennings was shown to be kind of a gatekeeper heavyweight, top 20, top 25 heavyweight. So that is the most elite win of Luis Ortiz's career. If Luis Ortiz were to beat Andrew Ruiz, I would have to at least put him at my number 5 or number 4 spot. So, because that would be an A-grade win. But I'm not sure if Luis Ortiz can beat Andrew Ruiz. Either way, I think it would be a great fight to make. It would be a fantastic matchup. I would personally predict Andrew Ruiz still to get out of this one, even though he looks a little bit more vulnerable with his defense being a little bit lackluster in this last fight. Because once again, I noticed that Andrew Ruiz ended up keeping his hands down a little bit more in this fight and kind of walked in straight forward into certain punches. And it cost him in certain rounds. So it is what it is. Andrew Ruiz is going to have to be very careful. But when we talk about this matchup, that's really, all I have to say about it. The question is, once again, do you think Luis Ortiz would knock him down multiple times in the first half of the fight or knock him out? Because to be honest with you, that's the only way that I see Luis Ortiz beating Andrew Ruiz. At least that's me personally. Now, if Andrew Ruiz faces a Dillian White, that's a completely different story. If he faces a Deontay Wilder, the way that he looked in that last fight, if he faces a Deontay Wilder, of course, it depends on how mentally and physically fit Deontay Wilder is going to be after that ass whooping that he suffered last year. Because he didn't just get beat, he got completely beat up in that fight, and certain fighters don't recover very well after beatings like that. But when it comes down to it, we'll have to see what happens. Deontay Wilder, if he returns anywhere near the form that he used to be, if he fights Andrew Ruiz in a form that he used to be in or anywhere near close, and Andrew Ruiz shows up like that, Andy's going to get knocked out within 6 rounds. I can promise you that. Because it would take Deontay Wilder a couple of right hands probably to knock out Andrew Ruiz. So it is what it is. Anyways, that's really all I have to say on this matter. We'll see what fight Andrew Ruiz is going to take next. I'm still not 100% completely sold that this fight is 100% sure for sure happening. But apparently they both want it, allegedly. So we'll see what happens with this. It'll be very interesting. So anyways, that's really about it for today. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.